A WNBA player just turned a $500 fine into a $1 million platform in 3 days. The playoff race is tighter than it's been in years. And the league's biggest star is out indefinitely with an injury that's revealing some fascinating truths about team building. If you think you know what happened in the WNBA this week, you probably only got half the story. I'm not here to break news or pretend I have insider access. What I am here to do is connect the dots that most people miss, show you why these stories matter way beyond the surface level, and give you the kind of analysis that helps you understand not just what happened, but what it all means. Some of this is confirmed reporting, some is me connecting patterns from publicly available data, and I'll always be clear about which is which. If you want WNBA analysis that actually shows its work instead of just throwing out hot takes, you're in the right place. Before we dive in, here's how I spent my week researching these stories. I cross-referenced game reports from multiple established WNBA beat reporters, tracked social media analytics to understand viral spread patterns, analyzed current standings against injury reports and recent performance trends, and dug into publicly available salary and contract data to understand the business implications of what we're seeing. What I don't have is locker room access or inside information from team executives. But what I can do is analyze the patterns in public information that tell us a lot about team strategies, league priorities, and where all of this is heading. The three big stories that caught my attention this week all connect to the same theme. We're watching the WNBA navigate unprecedented growth while individual players gain more power and influence than ever before. And nowhere is that more obvious than in what's happening with playoff positioning right now. 8 teams make the playoffs out of 13, and this year's race is completely different from what we've seen before. The gap between playoff teams and those fighting for spots isn't as large as it's been in previous years, which means every single game matters in ways that create genuine drama. Phoenix Mercury at 15-7 are sitting third in the Western Conference despite people writing them off after major roster changes. Seattle just demolished Chicago 95-57 with Skylar Diggins dropping 21 points, showing they're finding their identity after losing key players. But here's what's really fascinating. Teams are winning games they have no business winning because of depth and adaptability rather than pure star power. The Indiana Fever beat Las Vegas 80-70 on Thursday without Caitlin Clark, with Kelsey Mitchell, Natasha Howard, and Aaliyah Boston all stepping up in huge ways. That's not just role players having good games, that's systematic team building paying off when it matters most. What makes this even more compelling is what the numbers reveal about how teams are actually constructed now. I spent time digging into the data, and here's something that changes how we should think about Indiana. Clark has shot just 1 of 22 from three-point range on the road this season. That's not a small sample size problem, that's a fundamental issue that was affecting the team, even when their superstar was healthy. Yet they're winning games without her, which suggests they built better than anyone expected. When she comes back and hopefully figures out that road shooting, this team's ceiling could be dramatically higher than it appeared earlier in the season. Meanwhile, Atlanta at 14-10 just beat Phoenix 90-79 behind Alicia Gray's 28 points, with Brittany Griner contributing 17 in her emotional return to Phoenix. The Dream are quietly building something substantial with their new pieces, and they're doing it at exactly the right time in the season. The historical context matters here. We're seeing more parity than the WNBA has had in years, which makes these regular season games incredibly meaningful for playoff positioning. Teams that can adapt to injuries, find secondary scoring, and maintain chemistry are the ones that survive. This level of competitive balance changes everything about how teams should be thinking about roster construction and game planning. When the gap between the 3rd seed and the 8th seed is small enough that a 2-game swing can change your entire playoff trajectory, suddenly every decision matters more. Teams are going to get more aggressive about roster moves as we approach the trade deadline in August. When playoff positioning is this tight, 1 or 2 games can make the difference between home court advantage and missing the playoffs entirely. But there's something else happening here that's bigger than just basketball strategy. Players are realizing they have more leverage and platform power than ever before, and some of them are testing exactly how far that power extends. Which brings us to the story that absolutely exploded this week and reveals so much about where this league is heading. Sophie Cunningham just executed one of the most successful $500 investments in social media history, and I don't think she planned it that way. She posted a TikTok video lip-syncing to Sabrina Carpenter's Man-Child. The video got over 1.2 million views. The WNBA fined her $500. And then Cunningham's response was absolutely perfect. She tweeted, "I got fined $500 for this TikTok. IDK, why this is funny to me." Like, okay, you got it, bud, because there's not more important things to be worried about with our league right now. That last line is doing serious work because everyone knows exactly what she's referring to. But here's where this story gets absolutely wild from a business perspective. According to social media analytics I tracked, in the 3 days following this controversy, Cunningham gained 700,000 TikTok followers and 244,000 Instagram followers. She now has over 1 million TikTok followers total, up from about 115,000 in May. Her jersey was reportedly sold out on the team store. Think about this math for a second. If a brand wanted to add that many followers organically, they could easily spend over $1 million doing it. Cunningham got it for the price of a $500 fine and some league office irritation. When you look at publicly available salary information, $500 likely represents about 1 to 2 days of work for most WNBA players. But the platform growth she just experienced, that's potentially career-changing money in terms of endorsement opportunities and post-basketball media prospects. The timing makes this fascinating because we're in the middle of intense CBA negotiations where players are advocating for higher salaries and better working conditions. When you fine a player $500 for making a joke about refs on social media, while the league is simultaneously announcing massive expansion fees and media deals, you're essentially highlighting the exact disparity issues players are fighting to change. The fan reaction has been overwhelmingly supportive of Cunningham. Comments on her videos are full of people saying things like, "Start a GoFundMe for fines and say whatever you want." Fans are clearly more aligned with players than with league office priorities on this issue, which gives players even more leverage. Other players are watching this closely. Chicago's Angel Reese already said she doesn't care about fines because that shit is cheap, and more players are getting vocal about officiating issues. Cunningham just proved that strategic controversy can be incredibly valuable for building a personal brand and connecting with fans. This isn't just about social media drama. This is about players realizing they can use their platforms to build leverage in ways the league office didn't anticipate. Cunningham now has a platform that's worth way more than any realistic fine they could impose. And she's shown other players a potential playbook for turning league discipline into personal brand growth. The broader implications here connect directly to what we're seeing with player empowerment across the league, including how teams are handling their biggest stars when adversity hits. Caitlin Clark is still out with that groin injury. No timetable for return after additional medical tests this week showed no new damage. She's missed 3 games since July 15th, including the All-Star game in her home state. But what's really fascinating is what her absence is revealing about both her impact and her team's construction, and it connects directly to that playoff race we talked about. The Fever are in a crucial stretch of their playoff push without their best player, and how they perform in the next week or two could determine their entire season trajectory. But there's more to this story than just team missing their star. Remember that road shooting stat I mentioned earlier? Clark shooting 1 of 22 from three-point range on the road this season. That's not just a shooting slump. That's a fundamental issue that was affecting the team's performance even when she was healthy and playing. Yet they beat Las Vegas 80-70 on Thursday, with Kelsey Mitchell scoring 21 points, while Natasha Howard and Aaliyah Boston both recorded double-doubles. That's not just role players stepping up. That's evidence of roster construction that critics weren't sure existed in Indiana. This injury might actually be revealing that the Fever built better depth than expected. The coaching staff has had to find new offensive systems, other players have had to take on bigger roles, and they're discovering they can compete without relying entirely on Clark's individual brilliance. When she comes back healthy and hopefully with adjustments to her road game, this team's ceiling could be much higher than it appeared to be earlier in the season. Other teams are going to have to prepare for a potentially different version of the Fever, one that's more balanced and less predictable. This injury situation perfectly illustrates the broader theme we're seeing across the league. Teams that can adapt to adversity and find multiple ways to win are the ones that succeed in this new competitive landscape. Look at Seattle finding new offensive leaders after roster changes, or Atlanta building chemistry with veteran additions like Griner. Even rookies like Paige Buchers in Dallas are making immediate impacts. She's leading all rookies in scoring at 18.2 points per game and assists at 5.9 per game, numbers that rank 12th and 6th, respectively, among all WNBA players. The teams that make deep playoff runs this year are going to be the ones with the best depth and adaptability, not necessarily the ones with the best individual stars. Clark's injury is just one example of how this plays out, but it's happening across the league. Let me make some specific predictions you can track, because I think these storylines are going to develop in compelling ways. First, playoff race prediction. I think we see at least one current playoff team fall out of the top 8 by season's end, and at least one team currently on the bubble make a serious run. The parity is real this year. Watch for teams like Atlanta to get hot at exactly the right time while an established playoff team struggles with injuries or chemistry issues. Second, Clark's impact when she returns. I predict she fixes that road three-point shooting, and the Fever become a legitimately dangerous playoff team. I'm looking for her to shoot at least 35% from 3 on the road in her first 5 games back. If that happens, Indiana's ceiling changes dramatically, and they become a team nobody wants to face in the playoffs. Third, Cunningham's influence on player behavior. I predict we see at least 2 more players get fined for social media criticism before the season ends, but more importantly, I think other players start being more strategic about building their personal brands through calculated risks. Cunningham just showed them the playbook. I could be completely wrong about any of these, but here's my reasoning. The WNBA is in a phase where competitive balance is stronger than it's been in years. Individual players have more platform power than ever, and teams that adapt to adversity are going to thrive. Here's why this week mattered beyond the individual stories. We're watching the WNBA hit a sweet spot where competitive balance creates compelling basketball, individual players have unprecedented platform power, and teams are being forced to build smarter and deeper than ever before. The playoff race shows how parity creates genuine drama, where every game matters. Cunningham's situation shows how players can build massive leverage even when the league tries to discipline them. Clark's injury reveals how well-constructed rosters can adapt and potentially come back stronger. These aren't isolated incidents. They're all part of the WNBA, evolving into a more complex league where player empowerment, competitive balance, and strategic depth are reshaping everything we thought we knew about professional women's basketball. What do you think about this playoff race? Are there any teams you think are being overlooked that could make a serious run? And what's your take on Cunningham's strategy? Brilliant brand building or unnecessary antagonization of the league office? I genuinely read every comment because your perspectives often help me see angles I completely missed. If you want more analysis that digs deeper than the headlines, make sure you hit subscribe and the notification bell. I'll definitely be following up on whether these predictions pan out, and I've got some deeper dives planned on how these trends are reshaping the entire league. I'll be tracking all of these storylines, and we'll update you on whether this analysis holds up. Because honestly, the most compelling part about following this league right now is how unpredictable and dynamic everything has become.